Every person who has ever lost money in real estate made the same mistake at the beginning. Not a financial mistake, not a timing mistake. They trusted a system they did not understand, and by the time they understood it, the money was already gone. This is not a video about bad luck. This is not a video about the wrong neighborhood or the wrong moment to buy. This is about the architecture, the structure underneath the surface, the mechanics that were designed long before you arrived and that keep running whether you see them or not. There are 8 signs that the market is not working with you. It is working on you. Most people will never see them, not because they are not intelligent, because the system depends on them staying confused. You are about to stop being confused. Sign number 1. The advice you're getting sounds helpful, but always ends with you spending more. Someone tells you that now is the perfect time to buy. Interest rates are high, yes, but prices will stabilize. Waiting is the real risk. Get in now before it gets worse. Then someone else tells you the opposite. Wait, the market is about to correct. Prices are inflated. Buyers who rush in now will regret it. Both people sound credible. Both people have data. Both people gave you their advice for free. And yet, when you trace where each piece of advice leads, it leads to a transaction, it leads to a signature, it leads to a commission that someone else collects the moment you move. The advice that cost you nothing to receive almost always costs you something to follow. That is not a coincidence. That is how the real estate industry is structured. The people closest to you in the process are not paid to help you think. They are paid when you decide. A transaction that does not happen is a commission that does not exist. So the advice you receive is filtered, whether consciously or not, through the question of how to get you moving, not how to get you thinking. Sign number 1 is this. If the person giving you real estate advice gets paid when you act, their guidance is not neutral. It is incentivized, and incentivized advice wears the costume of wisdom while functioning as sales. You were not told this during your first conversation with an agent. You were supposed to feel guided. Sign number 2. You believe your monthly payment is the cost. It is not even close. You sit down, you run the numbers, you calculate your mortgage, your insurance, your property taxes, you compare it to your rent. The numbers feel close enough. You feel like you are finally doing the math correctly. You are not. The real cost of ownership does not live in your monthly payment. It lives in the compounding of invisible expenses that no one volunteers to explain on the day you sign. Maintenance alone. Standard financial guidance says to budget 1 to 2% of your property's value per year. On a €400,000 property, that is 4,000 to 8,000 euros every single year before anything breaks unexpectedly. Then there are transaction costs, agent commissions, notary fees, transfer taxes, inspection costs. Depending on the market, that is often 5 to 10% of the purchase price. Paid before you have lived there a single night, money that does not come back unless your property appreciates by at least that much before you sell. Then there is opportunity cost. The down payment you placed into the property is capital that no longer compounds elsewhere. The monthly payment is the number that gets shown to you. The real cost is the number they hope you never calculate until after you have already committed. There is also the cost of financing itself. In the first years of a standard mortgage, the vast majority of your monthly payment goes to interest, not to the asset, not to equity, to the bank. On a 25-year mortgage, you can spend the first decade paying mostly interest while your actual ownership stake grows slowly. That structure is legal, standard, and almost never explained in clear language before you sign. Sign number 2 is this. If your financial analysis begins and ends with the monthly payment, you have not done the analysis. You have done the part of the analysis that makes the transaction feel manageable. Sign number 3. You think appreciation will save every mistake. It has not saved most of them. There is a belief embedded so deeply in the way we talk about real estate that most people do not even recognize it as a belief. They treat it as a law. Property always goes up. Now ask yourself when you learned that, not where you read it. When it became something you stopped questioning. Japan saw real estate values collapse in the early 90s and spend the following 2 decades recovering. The United States in 2008 produced millions of homeowners who owed more on their mortgage than their property was worth. Not for a quarter, not for a year, for nearly a decade in some markets. Appreciation is real. Over long enough timelines, in strong enough markets, in well-chosen locations, property does tend to appreciate. But appreciation that averages out over 20 years does not protect you from the 10 years in the middle where it does not. It does not protect you from the moment you need to sell and the market is not cooperating. The belief that appreciation will correct any mistake you make is the belief the industry most needs you to carry. It neutralizes your due diligence, it softens your negotiation, it makes you move when the numbers do not yet make sense. Sign number 3 is this. Appreciation is a tailwind, it is not a safety net. And the people who told you it was a safety net were selling you something that required your confidence to close. Sign number 4. The urgency you feel was manufactured. There are only 3 units left at this price. The seller has received another offer. Interest rates are about to move again. If you wait, you will regret it. Every one of those sentences was designed to compress your decision-making window, not because the information is always false, but because a shorter decision window produces a less rigorous buyer. When you feel urgency, you stop comparing. You stop negotiating. You stop sleeping on it. You stop calling your financial advisor. You stop asking the uncomfortable questions about what happens if things go wrong. You close. The real estate transaction is one of the largest financial commitments most people will ever make. And it is one of the only large financial commitments where urgency is systematically introduced as a sales tool. You would not let someone rush you into choosing a surgeon. You would not sign a business contract under artificial time pressure. But when you are standing in a property that smells like fresh paint, and afternoon light is coming through the windows in exactly the right way, the emotional architecture of the moment has already begun working on you, sign number 4 is this. If you are feeling rushed in a real estate decision, the correct response is to slow down. The deal that disappears when you ask for 48 more hours was probably not the deal you needed. Sign number 5. Your agent is not on your side. They are on the side of the transaction. This one is uncomfortable because agents are often genuinely likable people. They call back quickly. They remember your preferences. The relationship feels like service. And it often is service. Competent, responsive, real service. But service is not the same as alignment. A buyer's agent in most markets earns their commission as a percentage of the sale price. No closing, no commission. Think carefully about what that structure produces. An agent who helps you negotiate a property from $400,000 to $370,000 has helped you save 30,000 euros. That agent has also reduced their own commission. They may have cost themselves 1,000 to 2,000 euros to save you 30. Most agents will negotiate on your behalf, but the financial structure creates a gravitational pull toward closing at the highest defensible price, not the lowest achievable price. That pull is not corruption. It is incentive. An incentive does not need to be conscious to function. When your agent tells you the seller will not go lower, they may be right. They may also be reflecting a conclusion they reached faster than your interest required. Sign number 5 is this. Your agent is a professional with their own financial interests. Do not mistake warmth for alignment. Do not mistake service for advocacy. The question your agent is trying to answer is not always the same as the question you need answered. Sign number 6. You are comparing yourself to the people who bought 10 years ago. That comparison is not your story. Your parents bought their house for a price that sounds like a number from another planet. Your colleague bought 5 years ago and has already seen significant appreciation. Someone in your social circle is sitting on equity that feels like a salary made while sleeping. You hear these stories and you feel the gap. And that gap produces a decision. You decide you need to catch up. You decide that buying now, even if the numbers are uncomfortable, even if you are not fully ready, is better than watching others accelerate away from you. That feeling is not yours. It was constructed for you. The people who bought 10 years ago were not smarter than you. They were earlier, and being early is not a replicable strategy. You cannot go back and buy 10 years ago. What you can do is buy now under today's conditions, higher prices, higher rates in many markets, a different risk profile entirely. Their appreciation does not make your numbers work. The fact that real estate was a strong vehicle for them does not mean the vehicle has the same fuel today. Sign number 6 is this. The moment you catch yourself justifying a purchase by referencing what someone else paid years ago, stop. Their entry point is not your entry point. Any decision made to close a social gap is a decision made for the wrong reason. Sign number 7. The system profits from your confusion at every stage. That confusion is not accidental. You are not taught how mortgages actually work in school. You are not taught what amortization does to your interest payments in the first decade of ownership. You are not taught how to read a property valuation or assess a building's structural condition. You are not taught that the advertised rental yield on an investment property is almost never the net yield you will actually receive. These gaps are not failures of your education. They are the architecture of an industry that runs more smoothly when its customers are confident enough to transact and confused enough not to negotiate. The information exists. Most of it is public, but it is distributed across sources that require time and prior knowledge to navigate. And the people guiding you through the process have a financial interest in the speed of that navigation, not the depth. At every point where your knowledge has a gap, there is a product or a service waiting to fill it, not neutrally, profitably. Sign number 7 is this. Every point of confusion in a real estate transaction is a point where someone else has an advantage over you. Your confusion is their leverage. Eliminating it is not preparation for the process, it is the process. The buyer who understands their amortization schedule, who knows the difference between asking price and realistic offer range, who can read a notary document without needing it summarized by the person being paid to close the deal, is a buyer who costs the industry money. That buyer negotiates harder. That buyer walks away from bad deals. That buyer is not moved by urgency because they have already done the analysis. You are not encouraged to become that buyer. Now you know why. Sign number 8. You think the goal is to own property. The people who build wealth understand the goal is to make the asset work. There is a version of home ownership that is a financial strategy. And there is a version that is a lifestyle decision financed at mortgage rates and described as a financial strategy. Most of what gets called real estate investing is the second version. Buying a primary residence is not an investment in the traditional sense. It is a financial commitment with potential for appreciation and with significant carrying costs, illiquidity, and transaction friction on both ends. The people who actually build wealth through real estate understand the difference. They do not buy and hope. They buy with a specific thesis, a cash flow thesis, an appreciation thesis in a specific market with specific fundamentals. They analyze net yield, not gross yield. They model vacancy. They stress test their numbers at higher maintenance costs and lower occupancy than the optimistic scenario. And they walk away from properties that do not meet their criteria because they are not buying to own. They are buying to perform. The version sold to most buyers is simpler. Buy something. Wait. It will go up. You will have built something. That version works sometimes in strong markets in good locations with favorable timing. It is not a strategy. It is a hope that came true for enough people that it became the default narrative. Sign number 8 is this. Owning property is not the same as using property as a financial tool. The first is a milestone. The second is a discipline. Confusing the two produces people who are house rich, cash poor, and calling it success, because that is what they were told to call it. Now, you know the 8 signs, and knowing them changes nothing automatically. The agent is still going to tell you the seller will not go lower. The listing is still going to say this property is a rare opportunity. The urgency will still be placed in front of you like a fact. The comparison to what your parents paid will still surface at every family dinner. None of that stops. What stops is your automatic response to it. You stop treating an agent's timeline as your timeline. You stop calculating affordability by monthly payment alone. You stop letting someone else's appreciation story justify your own numbers that do not yet work. You stop moving because the atmosphere in the room told you to move. You start asking who gets paid when you sign. You start reading the full cost structure, not the headline number. You start separating urgency from fact. You start building the specific knowledge that makes you expensive to mislead. And you start recognizing the 8 signs before they finish working on you. The manufactured urgency, the incomplete math, the incentivized advice, the social pressure disguised as investment logic, the confusion that was never an accident. The real estate market does not have a conspiracy against you. It has an architecture. And architecture does not need conspiracy to function. It just needs participants who do not understand what they are standing inside. You understand it now. That changes the quality of every decision you make from here forward. Not because you stop believing in real estate, but because you stop believing in a version of it that was never designed to benefit you. The version that benefits you exists. It is more demanding. It requires more preparation, more patience, and more willingness to walk away. But it is the only version worth playing, and you cannot play it until you stop being played by it. Now you are.